There is this narrative being pushed that men and women are at war with one another. We live in an age where women no longer feel they need men, where men feel like they no longer need to be married, but clearly there is much more going on here than meets the eye. You see, from the beginning of human history, we have been bombarded by the incredibly powerful and destructive force of nature. So we've required strong masculine energy to survive, to evolve, to keep us alive long enough to get to where we are today. The entire foundation of our life here on Earth has been built upon men, their sacrifices, the masculine energy, the force of masculinity. But because we are so far removed, because we are protected from the force of nature, there has been this subtle narrative that perhaps we no longer need strong masculine men. It is only when men create a boundary, create space, create protection from the harsh natures of reality, does the feminine flourish. It is only from the masculine defenses do we have the freedom for things such as art and philosophy, these luxuries of life that are not possible when we are forced to face survival, hunger, when every day we are in danger of being eaten by something, destroyed by natural disaster. And so we have approached a time in which we are no longer appreciative of the sacrifices that men have made since the beginning of history. There's a bit of entitlement, but at the same time, I do not believe that it is of much question that women have needed to repress themselves in order to live in a world made by men. Because in our natural environment, where there is always danger, where the destructive force of nature is always pressuring us to act, motivating us with the fear of death and suffering. For both men and women, it does not matter what you want. Your feelings and your emotions and your fancy ideas mean nothing when there are barbarians at the gates, ready to kill and enslave everybody. And so women who have not been subjected to the destructive force of nature, who have lived their entire lives protected, well, then it's easy to have this perspective that women have been repressed by men. That because we live in a man's world, women do not have the freedom to express themselves fully. And because there is truth in this, women believe it perhaps to be more of a whole truth. But the danger of ideology and grounding your identity in this kind of philosophical interpretation of reality is that we become very ungrounded. We have these ideas in our head, but they are not rooted in reality. Because the fact is that both men and women from the beginning of time have been repressed by the destructive force of nature. We have to put aside what we want and what we desire to survive. And oftentimes women do not see the sacrifices and the struggles that men have to go through for us to live a life of freedom, to indulge in the luxuries of art and music and philosophy. But the danger is that the order that was originally established by masculine men, it has been taken over by governments. So women say, well, I don't need no man, but yet they rely on Big Daddy government for their protection, for their safety. And then men do not feel needed or appreciated. Why would they work hard and struggle when their power will simply be usurped by what may seem to be tyrannical governments or people in power, the elites. So men say, well, there's no reason to get married because the danger and the side effects and the downsides, it's just too risky. And so we get caught in a negative feedback loop, and men and women position themselves for combat against each other. The natural process, the cycle that we go through, the dynamic between masculinity and femininity, order and chaos, is that men create the boundaries, they create the space for the feminine to flourish within. But the problem is we become disassociated from the struggle and the sacrifice that the men had to make to create this space. So we become entitled. We have too much freedom. And so chaos, which is the destructive force of nature, that force in which so much time and energy was spent in protecting against, rather than the threat being at the boundaries, rather than the barbarians being at the gates, everything is destroyed from within. We have to be aware that this is very likely what is happening, that we have entered into a downward spiral because of the excess chaos. We have become far removed from struggle. Everything is provided for us. All our needs are taken care of, for the most part. At the very least, we do not have to wake up every day worried that we're going to be eaten by some animal. And so we simply take it for granted. And so the order that was created begins falling apart, because the destructive force of chaos has found its way inside. And so the entropy in the system begins to compound and magnify over time. So we are in a process of breaking down, of destruction. And it doesn't mean that we need to go out into the streets and cry out that the sky is falling, that the end of the world is here. But we must be aware so that we can position ourselves the best we can to adapt and to become a part of the new world. We are in a time of great change. This is why we have seen a rise in the masculine movement, generations of young men rising up to the challenge of becoming warriors. Nature has begun balancing itself out because it has realized that there is an abundance of feminine energy in our societies. But rather than resist and try to avoid this natural process, first of creating boundaries and then breaking them down, we must accept and embrace this change. Change is the very nature of chaos. So to protect ourselves in this changing time, we must again embrace the protection and safety of masculine men. We must also embrace change in the feminine. We must understand that the problem is not in masculinity or femininity, order or chaos. The problem is in rejecting these aspects in ourselves, because women repress the masculine in themselves and then project it as evil onto men. And because men don't understand the feminine within themselves, women are a mystery. So it's not that there is a war between men and women in today's societies. It's that there is a war between the masculine and feminine within ourselves. Because we do not know ourselves. We have not spent the time for self-discovery and self-awareness. And so we can learn about ourselves by the way we project certain things onto other people. How do we judge others? Where are we triggered? What gets under our skin makes us emotional? What is the story in our head that we keep playing over and over again, the patterns that are repeated? These are signs, representations of patterns within us. These are reflections of our inner identity. And the process of coming into wholeness, to completeness, is in recognizing the aspects of ourselves that we have rejected. The moment we begin integrating the repressed aspects of ourselves, the more we begin healing the world around us. Because men and women, this is an abstract idea that we use to understand groups of individuals. So it is the individual who is the building block of the group. And when the individuals begin to change, they begin to change the group. And so the more we blame men or the more we blame women, this is not so much about the facts in which we believe. This is more about projecting our inner reality onto an external world, projecting our own self onto other people. So long as we are at war with one another, we are blinded and distracted from the truth. And the truth is that we are, in a way, subconsciously ignoring facing our own selves, facing the truth about us. Because the things that we find unacceptable in ourselves, we project onto other people to create a sense of separation from those particular traits or patterns of behavior, so we can rest easy having our sense of self-identity and saying, okay, I'm right, I'm good, that person is bad, they're wrong. We blame others for our own shortcomings that we refuse to face. So truly there is no war between men and women. It's an illusion. It's a distraction. Perhaps, without going into conspiracy, it is a narrative that has been constructed to distract you. And because there is seeds of truth within it, we believe it, and then we co-create and reinforce that reality. The more we focus on others, we ignore ourselves. To understand the highest truth of reality, we must see the underlying unity behind all things. That we are all one consciousness experiencing itself. And so that all we project onto other people is merely a reflection of ourselves. And that there, in truth, is no separation. And so when we are in illusion, we are aligned with death. We are aligned with destruction, because that which is illusion is temporary. It's a phantom. It comes and goes. It arises and disappears. It is not lasting. And death is the very nature of that which is temporary. It does not last. But the truth is eternal. The truth is everlasting. It does not change. And that which is eternal is aligned with life, because by definition, it never dies. It lives forever. So if we want to avoid the destruction of the human race, or at the very least our societies, what has been built for thousands of years, we must begin becoming aware of what is true and then aligning ourselves with it. To stop projecting our own shortcomings onto other people, blaming them, to realize that everything is but a reflection of ourselves. And to become more self-aware, and when we become more aware, we are able to change ourselves, our behaviors. So those women who hate men or blame men for whatever, reflect on what this means about you, not about other people. And for men who hate women, who blame women for their problems, reflect upon yourself. The answers to many of our problems are quite simple. Face yourself. Stop focusing so much on the external world and focus within. Face yourself.